Other programs that are like state-run programs around the country that offer down payment assistance to first-time home buyers. Some of those programs are grant programs where the money is not meant to be repaid, and some of them are second liens where the money does get repaid, but it's a 0% interest, and there's only a few different ways that down payment assistance comes due.
So, hi, and welcome to Beyond the Paycheck. I'm Paula Christine. So, I've had a lot of questions about is it a good time to buy a house or because interest rates are high and housing prices are still high, at least in Michigan. I don't know if that's true all over the country. But anyway, what should you do? So, I've asked my friend Marc Edelstein from Ross Mortgage to have the conversation with me. So, welcome, Marc.
Good to be here.
I'm glad you're happy to be here. Okay. So, you helped me buy my house. So we had this conversation back when I was buying because, prices were high and interest rates, I think were at 7% when I bought. And I know recently we had a conversation, that potentially if rates go down, that we will refinance. And they went down a little bit, but not enough for me to refinance. So with that being said, though, if you find the house of your dreams, even though it's maybe high price or interest rates are still high, do you buy it?
Yeah. So I believe that like the greatest way to build wealth in the United States is to own real estate, whether it's your primary residence or investment property or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's still the best way to accumulate wealth here in our country. So when anybody asks me, oh, should I wait to buy a house? My answer is always no. It doesn't matter what the market conditions are. The answer is always no. And so what I did
Oh, the
was,
answer is always yes, not no.
oh yeah, the answer is always yes to no waiting.
No
No
waiting.
to waiting. That's the
No
answer.
to no to
Right.
waiting. Okay.
Right. For a couple of reasons. One, each person's scenario is different. If they have a short-term need or a need for housing in the near term, market conditions really shouldn't matter. Having a house over your head, a roof over your head, is really what matters, right?
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody is hesitant to give up their 3% interest rate, but they've outgrown their home for whatever reason, or they're now empty nesters and they have too much home, but again, psychologically, they just don't want to give up that 3% or low interest rate for what's available
Mm-hmm.
today. I would contend that it's still the right time to buy for several reasons. One, there are households being created in the United States at a rapid pace. Those households need housing. The price of homes are not coming down. There is more need for housing than there is available stock of housing. So, supply and demand. The prices are not coming down. As far as interest rates go,
Wait.
yes,
Can I ask a question?
yeah.
So do you think they'll eventually start to level off where they're not going up as much, or do you think the bidding
Oh,
wars
yeah.
are
And
still
we've
going to
seen
continue?
that,
Okay.
right? Like during 2019, 2020, during the pandemic, and we were seeing very rapid rates of appreciation. That's slowed down. We're not losing value, we're just not gaining it as fast as we were. So think of it as a car. You're going 60 miles an hour, everything is great, and now we just slowed down to 30 miles an hour. We're still moving forward, just not as quickly, right?
Okay. So let's say that we'll get back to interest rates in a second. Well, maybe this will probably lead to interest rates. But if the interest rates are high and the housing price is high, that means that you can have to buy maybe less of a home because you want to make sure that you can afford to make that payment, even if it's only a short term until interest rates go back down.
Correct. That's true. You want to make sure that what you're purchasing and the payment fits what your budget is.
Right.
That's a huge part of it. Absolutely. And as interest rates fall, maybe you could qualify for more. But if you wait for interest rates to fall, what you're missing out on is the appreciation that you would have gained had you bought, right?
Yeah.
So historically, let me show you this real quick.
Well, for those of you who are audio, you can't see.
Okay, so I'll make sure
You'll have
that
to read.
I explain it.
Well, just okay.
I read it as well. All right, so
Okay.
here's a scenario I put together where we're buying a $300,000 house. We're putting 10% down now, and we're looking at what's the difference if I wait a year or do it now.
Okay.
So here on the left, you see the appreciation gain over a year. So you buy the house now at 300,000. In a year, it's worth $310,781. That's based off of historical appreciation, not forecasted appreciation. This is historical
Okay.
appreciation. Sure, on the right-hand side, we see interest rates have fallen over the year. And now, if you waited a year, your payment would be $100 less than it would be if you purchased now. So over that 12-month period, you save $1,200 because your payment's going to be $100 less a year from now, but you
Right.
gave away $10,781 in appreciation that you could have had.
And
So
you've also given away your dream home.
potentially, yeah, yep, yep.
So what you're
So
saying is don't wait.
don't wait. And so let's say you did buy and you did refinance down the road and it cost you $4,000 to refinance, you're still ahead by $5,581 or $55,581. The appreciation gain minus that $1,200 that you saved on $100 a month on by waiting a year, and then the cost to refinance when rates drop after you purchase it. So buying now is always the right answer. It's never not the right answer unless there's some sort of economic thing happening within your household that prevents you from buying.
Well, that can happen no matter what, even if you waited.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. For sure. Here's the other component that sometimes you'll hear people say, well, housing is unaffordable. The cost of like my wages aren't going up, to match the uh, the affordability of homes. And the counter argument to that is yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe your wages aren't going up as high as the rate of appreciation on homes, but you don't use your entire wage for your housing. You only use 25, 28, 30% of your wage for housing. So the affordability argument kind of falls flat when you look at how wages are rising compared to home values increasing.
Well, not only that, but you're building appreciation in an asset. And rent is high right now. I
Rent
mean,
rent's
so
going up like I think I read between 3 to 5% a year on new leases, and it's going up probably something similar on leases that
renewals.
get re-signed, renewals.
Well, when you think about it, like I'm, like when I think of my situation, I went from what I was paying in rent to pretty much the same of what my mortgage payment was. So I didn't feel like I was taking on any more payments or higher payments, and
Yeah,
it and I'm building equity in my own home. And if worst case scenario happened, I can always sell this if you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I mean, there's just so many positives to owning a home. But although home ownership isn't for everybody, I mean, if somebody's in a transient lifestyle where they might have to move in a couple years, I wouldn't suggest buying a
correct.
home. I would rent.
Or if you work in a profession where you travel a lot, like a traveling nurse, you have a contract, you're there for 6 months, you're there for a year, and then you're on someplace else. Yeah, maybe not. Maybe buying isn't right for them.
Yeah, I look at some of the people when I was renting my condo, and a lot of them were people who traveled a lot for work. And it just made so much sense for them to rent because they'd be gone for like 2, 3 weeks at a time. Then they pop back in for a couple weeks and then they were gone again. Can you imagine if you'd have to hire someone to cut your grass, and then, the security I think is much higher in that type of situation when you're in an apartment or renting something and you don't have maintenance to worry about. If something breaks, the landlord's going to fix it. So there are some benefits to renting.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. But again, it's got to be the right scenario, right?
So let's talk about interest rates for a second.
Yeah.
So the Fed rate dropped, but yet the mortgage rates weren't really affected.
No. And they won't be. And actually, if you go back historically and look at Federal Reserve rate drops, you see the opposite happen with mortgage rates, right? Mortgage rates are long-term rates, 30 years, 20 years, 15 years. The Federal Reserve lowering their federal funds rate is a overnight interest rate. It's a very, very, very short-term interest rate. While it does impact things that are adjustable, like credit cards, home equity lines of credit, things like that will have an immediate impact on once the Federal Reserve lowers the rate. It doesn't impact long-term mortgage rates. It's a nice, news.
Yeah, everybody gets all excited about it, but
everyone gets all excited. The phone starts to ring, but in the end, it doesn't impact. What impacts mortgage rates is inflation. That is the key driver of mortgage interest rates.
But inflation is going down since where it was.
Correct, it has. But those higher prices are still built into the economy. We didn't see a 9% drop or 7% drop in prices when inflation went from 9% to 2%. You just, it's still built into the prices that we pay for everyday items.
So when will that level out? When will it catch up?
I don't
come on, aren't you an economist?
know that it will, right? Again, it's supply and demand. If people just stop buying those things, then the price will have to come down. But as long as people are still purchasing these items, especially like food items, groceries, I don't see prices coming down. Like if I was a grocer, why would I lower prices?
Yeah, that's the same thing like what they did with, canned goods. They went from, they just made them slightly smaller, so you got a little bit less.
Oh, the shrinkflation. Yeah, for sure.
Got a lot less. Paying the same price, maybe even more, but getting a lot less.
Lots of things. Boxes of cereal, bags of chips, more air in a bag of chips than chips.
There's always too much air in a bag of chips.
Right.
Man, that sucker should be filled right to the top.
110%.
Oh my God, I went and bought a piece of candy, a candy bar the other day, and at a gas station, which I know is normally higher price than you would pay pretty much any place else because, they're smaller and they have to make a profit. But I think it was like $2.50 for a piece of a candy bar. Now, I remember when I was growing up, and I could be wrong, but I think it was 50 cents or something like that. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I'm like, now then the question goes, do I even really need that candy bar at $2.50?
Without a doubt. Yeah, absolutely. Especially at $2.50. I'm the same way. I like soda. I like pop. I'm not afraid to admit it. I love it. I love it. But to buy a 20-ounce can of or a plastic bottle of Coke or Mountain Dew or anything, it's $2.70.
I know. Well, you should buy a 12-pack or go to Costco and buy a whole,
right?
Whatever that size pack is.
Yeah, the problem is if I have it in my house, I'm going to drink it all day.
Well, maybe we need to sign you up for Pop Addiction Anonymous.
Yeah, right. Or just, show me some pictures of people that are extremely diabetic and that'll scare me.
Well, at least I hope you're drinking the pop that doesn't have the sugar and all that stuff in it.
Come on.
Okay, let's talk about.
I go between Mountain Dew and Cherry Coke. So
oh my God, Mountain Dew! I had a sip of Mountain Dew the other day. I was
delicious.
Like, oh my God, this is
cold.
So sweet.
Delicious.
I hadn't had it in years. Okay, let's talk about. Let's say that I decided, or someone decided listening, that they jumped on the bandwagon. They're ready to go buy a house. What are the options for down payment? Does it have to be the 20%?
No, definitely not. No, 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 no. So the minimum down payment on a conventional loan is 3%. The minimum down payment on an FHA loan is 3.5%. The minimum down payment on a rural development loan is 0%, so no down payment.
On a what
And
loan?
a rural development loan, like a USDA backed loan, for
Okay. Oh,
rural
okay.
areas.
Yeah, for rural
Yeah.
areas. What about
And
a
then
VA?
VA, if you're a member of the military, active or veteran, and you have eligibility for the VA home loan, that is also 0% down payment. So let's a definition that we need to put out there is what's the definition of a first time home buyer in the mortgage world? So you might think a first time home buyer is I'm buying my very first home ever, and then I can never be a first time home buyer ever again.
No, because I was.
Correct.
Even though I've owned 5 homes, I was actually, when I bought this house, I was first time home buyer.
The definition of a first time home buyer in the mortgage world is anybody who's not been on title to a home in the past 3 years. If that's the case, then you're considered a first time home buyer. If not, with conventional financing, which is by far the most popular financing, you cannot put 3% down. You must put at least 5% down because you're not considered a first time home buyer. 3% down, reserved for first time home buyers. Conventionally, FHA, VA, USDA, there's no restriction.
USDA sounds like you're talking about me.
Just homes in rural areas.
Well, isn't that what that organization that takes
But
care of the meat?
yeah, correct. It does. But the crazy thing about a USDA rural development loan is you cannot purchase a working farm. They do not allow you to purchase a working farm or a hobby farm. Or like let's say you're going to buy a house that's on 40 acres and 30 acres are leased out to a farmer who grows soybeans. No can do on that loan. It's a working farm. Even though you're not working the land, you're leasing it out to somebody else who is. So it's just goofy. We don't need to get in the weeds about different property.
Yeah, because I think that affects not as many people as that are buying just a regular house in a subdivision.
Yeah. And then let's talk about more about some specific programs for first-time home buyers.
Okay.
So Fannie and Freddie both have first-time home buyer programs. One is called Home Ready. The other one is called Home Possible. Those allow you to put 3% down. They have cheaper mortgage insurance premiums than normal. And you need to be under a specific income limit for the census tract where you're purchasing your home. So if your income is below that limit, you get the benefit of cheaper mortgage insurance and a slightly cheaper interest rate if you meet those qualifications. There are some other programs that are like state-run programs around the country that offer down payment assistance to first-time home buyers. Some of those programs are grant programs where the money is not meant to be repaid, and
Right.
some of them are second liens where the money does get repaid, but it's a 0% interest, and there's only a few different ways that down payment assistance comes due. But those programs are available. There's one here in Michigan where first-time home buyers can access $10,000 towards their closing costs and prepaid expenses. And
Nice.
don't.
So when we were talking about my home purchase, we were going with how much to put down, and we kind of went back and forth about what to do because I needed also the cash to make some improvements. And so we opted in going with that 3% down.
Yeah.
And then using my cash that I had to make those improvements.
Well, because I think what we found is the difference between 3% down and 5% down and 10% down really wasn't too dramatic to the point where your cash was better served doing something else than investing it in a mortgage.
Right. And knowing the fact that we were going to refinance down the road anyway.
Yeah.
And I could always put more money down on it when I refinance.
Yeah, or on a monthly basis if you wanted.
Yeah, I could. I could. I'm trying for that. Like, no, I mean, I have a stash that I'm working on, but I just kind of want to go through my first year
Yeah.
of making just the regular payment and then probably dump a bunch of cash in there and, or maybe just hold off till I refinance.
Yeah, there's all kinds of programs available
Oh,
for first time home buyers. There's like community reinvestment loan programs for people who are purchasing homes in what are considered underserved census tracts. And those programs don't have any income limits. As long as the house is in the census tract, it doesn't matter how much money you make. You still can get the benefit of some lower mortgage insurance if you're putting 3% down, and a slightly lower interest rate if you're putting, 3 or 5% down.
so how do you find out what's in the low census tract?
Well, you got to call a lender who writes those types of loans because there's like a B2B website that you can type in the address and it'll tell you if you're in the right census tract. Because each lender that offers the program might have different qualifications, which means maybe one house for this particular lender is in a eligible census tract, but that same house with a different lender is not.
Okay. Let's go to a question that I have since we're talking about potentially refinancing, hopefully sometime in the next year or so. I know if you do is it bi-weekly mortgage? Is that the term I
Yep.
want? Okay.
Are we?
You pay the house out faster.
Yep.
Is there
4 years and 7 months.
Oh, that's all?
That's it.
That's all. So I guess, do you have to sign up for that in advance or can you just...
Yeah. So yeah, you have to actually. You probably might even have to go through a third party to do it because most mortgage servicers aren't accepting payments or half a payment every 2 weeks.
So you
So
could calculate I guess that all has to do with the fact that it's all an interest thing because when the balance interest occurs on the balance.
that's
So
right.
it's saying that you're paying that payment more frequently, so your balance is lower, so
But
you're
here's
paying
the
less
here's
interest.
right. But instead of doing it that way, where you're making a half a payment every 2 weeks, the benefit of that is you're making there's 52 weeks in a year, right? So you're
Hmm.
making 26 half payments. So that should equal 13 months of payments in a 12-month calendar year, right? Just make one extra payment a year and you accomplish the same thing. You don't need to sign up for a service to manage it for you.
Okay.
You don't need to find a mortgage servicer that's going to accept biweekly payments. Just make one extra payment a year and you accomplish the same exact thing.
But when you make a payment, you can always add that extra. Like,
That's right.
let's say if it's an extra, your payment's $1,200, then you can add just an extra $100 each month, and you'd
That's
still be
right.
accomplishing the same thing instead
The
of coming up that
same
lump sum.
the same exact thing. One thing though to caution about making that extra payment is when you do that, you have to make sure that the servicer knows that it's to be applied to principal. Some servicers, if you maintain an escrow account with them, will put it in your escrow account and not apply it to the principal.
Yeah, I
Just
was, I was looking at mine online the other day, and yeah, you get to choose where it goes.
That's right. Yeah. If you're making your payment online, but if you just send in a paper check and you add some extra to it, servicer doesn't actually know what you're plan on doing with that. Even if, I mean, you could put a note in the memo line, whether that gets read and acted on, who knows?
So just one extra payment would shorten your mortgage by only 4 years.
Almost five.
Oh, so you'd have to really put a lot down if you wanted to shorten it. Because I mean, I did 30 years knowing that I really want to have it paid off in 12. So I mean, I know how to do this. I went to the amortization
Yeah.
calculator and figured it out. It's quite a bit.
I'm not a fan of paying off mortgages. Like you're never going to convince me to have a home free and clear is a good idea.
Well, I look at it as I didn't think that way until the changes in the taxes where you can only write off so much, and
Oh, mortgage interest.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that kind of changed a bit because of the standard deduction being a lot higher, and being a financial planner, I know it's a lot more comforting for people to go into retirement with knowing that their mortgage is paid off, and then they use the payment that they were making for other things like healthcare or travel, or so it's a
Yeah,
comfort. It's a comfort thing, peace of mind.
absolutely. Without a doubt. I
Yeah,
see it like the opposite way. I'd rather pull that money out and invest it in something that's going to make me more money than the cost to borrow it.
yeah. That's a whole different conversation because
100%.
yeah, that's about discipline, and I mean, that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean,
Or, I mean, if you took your equity and used it to purchase on maybe another property and as a rental,
yep.
I mean, that would then bring in the income to make that payment and
Oh,
potentially
yeah.
some profit for you. I could see doing that.
There are IRAs that, and you probably know this, that
Mhm.
allow you to invest in real estate. Like if I got a $100,000 IRA and I want to buy a $60,000 investment property, my IRA can buy that investment property.
Yeah, if you could find a $60,000 investment.
No, I know. Right. Yeah, right. Right. But I just found it
Yeah.
interesting that you can have an individual retirement account that just isn't invested in the market or financial securities versus real estate.
Yeah. Well, that whole goes into another conversation too about just diversifying your portfolio
Yeah,
and not
for
having all
sure.
your eggs in the market or all your eggs in the same basket, which is the market, because we all see what can happen there,
Yeah,
especially if you need it.
yeah. But I think like I feel like as a as somebody who was looking to get into real estate and looking to purchase my first home, I mean, there's I could say that there's no better time, but there was a couple years ago when rates were lower, but it's still historically interest rates are about where we are historically on 30-year fixed rates. We're in the low sixes. It's not offensive at all, I don't think.
I remember when I bought my very first home, I was 23, I think, and my interest rate was like 13% or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was, and that's high compared to what they are today. And
Without a doubt.
yeah, but they
Without
came down. I mean, they came down, and but who would have ever thought we'd see twos and threes?
right. And so now we spoil the generation of home buyers and homeowners thinking that if your rate's not in the threes or fours, then it's just not worthwhile. And I don't think that could be further from the truth.
No, you got to look at your everything all together as a whole and not make decisions just based on one thing.
Yeah, for
Okay.
sure. But there's great programs for, like we were saying, great programs for first time home buyers. The myth of having to put 20% down is not true. You don't need to put 20% down. And the barriers to home ownership um, aren't really that high. The hurdles you need to jump through. I mean, the mortgage process is pretty simple. Well, you went through it.
Yeah, I
Budget
did.
documents up front, some more towards the end, and you're done.
Yeah. Yes, it is. There's some things you want to make sure you don't do, but that's a
Yeah, for
different
sure. There's things
conversation.
you don't
But
want to. But that comes along with working with the right loan officer and getting the right advice and having somebody who, the right people on your real estate team, they're going to help you fulfill this goal of, buying a home.
on that note, if somebody wants to reach out to you and has any further questions, how can they reach you?
Oh yeah, yeah. So I'm here in Southeast Michigan. I can be reached by phone at 248 area code 379-6749. You can find me on all kinds of social media and under Marc Edelstein. Um, and yeah,
Will you take calls from people in different states, even though I know you can't help them?
Yeah, I certainly would. We have, I think Ross Mortgage is licensed in 19 states, maybe 18 states. So, yeah, anybody who reaches out wants more information about any types of loan programs and they're not in my local area, if we're licensed in that state, I'd be happy to connect them with one of my colleagues.
Okay. On the last note, I want to mention something about Mark that I found different than other mortgage brokers, is that he is a divorce specialist. And if you're considering getting a divorce, you should reach out to him because you want to make sure that as you're going through that divorce process, that you do everything correctly, especially if you want to purchase a home or even keep your current home.
Yeah. So I am a certified, thank you for that, by the way. I am a certified divorce lending professional. I have an extreme amount of knowledge on the complexities of finances in divorce. Um, you know, I pride myself in being a good listener. When you're working with divorcing clients, you just have to listen, 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 and then validate what you heard by asking some direct questions. So you're on the right path, right? So listening is a huge, huge, huge skill that I've learned over time, and being empathetic. These people are going through a very, very, very tough time. Um, and you have to show some empathy. They're not just another commission or another loan. They're real people that are going through a tough time, and they really, really could use your expertise. Right?
Okay, I'm going to cut us off here.
Okay.
So I appreciate you, Mark, as always.
Yeah.
And if anybody needs to get a hold of me, you can reach me at paulachristine.com. Thank you.